Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. As you know, this is a webinar where we're going to discuss Lyme disease. You create the webinar each week with your questions. So I'm interested to see what you have in store for me. I apologize. I've been gone for a couple weeks due to some family health issues, but I'm back here with you again tonight. So I'm interested to see what you have in store. For those of you that are returning, I'm glad to see a lot of familiar names back here again, and I'm glad to see you keep returning. You must be getting some value out of this. For those of you that are new, as the old timers know, there's a couple ways you can participate. First, you can be bold and actually write a question to me. And the way that you wind up doing that is over on the right-hand side of the screen at the bottom, there is a chat box, and you can write your question to me in that chat box. I want you to be aware, though, that I ask that you don't hit the enter key until the whole question is written. The trouble is, if you hit the enter key while you're writing your question to create paragraphs, it actually sends a separate question to me each time, and it gets really difficult to follow those pieces from my side over here. So I request don't hit that enter key until you're done. Second thing, short questions work best. If you start getting into a whole life history, that gets very difficult for me to handle too. This format works better for shorter questions, okay? The second way that you can participate is to see what questions others have and the responses that I give to those. There's always a lot of useful information that you can get that may apply to your situation as well too. And so if you're in the live version, as you all right now are, you're going to be able to see those questions posted on your screen on the bottom. So you'll be able to read along with me. But I will read them because the recorded version doesn't show those questions that you're going to be able to read on your screen. Okay. As usual, I am creating a recording tonight's webinar. And if everything goes as planned, so I'll have to see if that works. But the recording is being made, and if it does go as planned, I will be editing it up. I think the edit is probably going to take place tomorrow morning. I've got some plans I need to get to later tonight, so I won't be doing a night edit. But I'll do an edit tomorrow morning, and then we'll get that posted to YouTube. Because I am waiting to do the edit until tomorrow morning, it means that you may not receive the email from me announcing that everything is set to go and you can view it until maybe around 10 or 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. So you'll be seeing that the recording may be coming out a little bit later than usual. Okay. And then in that recording, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for our next webinars, which will be in February. And I plan on going with a webinar next week already. Although for next week's webinar, I will be on the road. We'll be doing that one from Colorado Springs. As many of you know, my mother was having health problems and she passed away on Friday after 10 days in the intensive care unit. And my father, not to be outdone in Colorado Springs, decided to have a stroke and a heart attack. So I'm the one that helps manage him. So I got him stabilized. He's in rehab right now, doing a lot better, recovering. But I have to go up and spend time with him next week. So I'll be doing this webinar up from either his place or in my camper van. So one of the two. But we will be doing it next week. Okay. All right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. We'll take a first question. Let's see here. All right. Hello, Denise. So see, my daughter has treated Bartonella for 8 months now. She has psychiatric symptoms that has practically gone now. I ran some tests last month and she had an abnormal EEG. Is it possible Bartonella screw with that? Is there a way to fix it? In her blood test, her complement C3, C4, and CH50 and her NK cells were low. Is this caused by the disease that consumes the complements? Or is it the other way around and the Bartonella becomes chronic because of these low values? All right. So everyone, let me try to answer that, Denise. And I'm afraid I might not have the greatest answers for you here. So everyone, complements are a part of your immune system. They're a different part of your immune system than antibodies and then T cells that fight infections and natural killer cells that fight infections. But this is a protein system that also is involved in fighting infections as well, too. And some people have low complement levels, which makes it harder for them to fight infection. But what you're raising here is what came first. Is it low complements that made it more difficult to treat the Bartonella, or did the Bartonella suppress the immune system and lead to low complements? I tend to think for most people, it's the other way around. I tend to think for most people is that they have a history of low complements. Although I will tell you, it is possible that Bartonella can cause low complement levels as well too. There's immune suppression that happens as a result of Bartonella, right? So it's hard for me to say what came first there, the chicken or the egg, basically, right? And then in terms of the abnormal EEG, so the abnormal electrical patterns of the brain, I haven't seen that reported before. I would suppose it is possible you could get into some injury to the brain from having Bartonella. So, for instance, the way that one of the ways that Bartonella causes problems is it does infect the cells that line your blood vessels. Those are called endothelial cells, and from within those endothelial cells, it causes problems. One of the things that may happen, although there's no science behind this, but we know from other infections, is that when you have infections that attack the endothelial cells, they may injure the lining of those endothelial cells, which is something called the endothelial glycocalyx, okay? And that's a barrier over the endothelial cells. That endothelial glycocalyx is responsible for allowing certain things to be absorbed into those cells. It also, if it's functioning properly, will cause nitric oxide to be released, which allows for blood flow further down. It causes dilation to your blood vessels. And then the other thing that can happen with the endothelial glycocalyx is I think I just blanked here. Oh, if it's healthy functioning endothelial glycocalyx, you tend not to get any aggregation or grouping of platelets. But if you have damage to the endothelial glycocalyx, you can have clumping of your platelets and eventually limiting blood flow into the smaller blood vessels in the brain. All right. So we know from COVID, for instance, that there is injury that can happen to that endothelial glycocalyx. And there are some things you can do to rebuild that. And I'm starting to look at those options also for people that have a Bartonella as well, too. One of the things that can rebuild the endothelial glycocalyx if it is injured, and again, the problem for Bartonella is no one's done the research to show that the endothelial glycocalyx gets injured, but what it can get injured by is excess cytokines and things that infect those endothelial cells. Well, Bartonella triggers excess cytokines, and Bartonella also infects the endothelial cells, so you would think there's probably some injury to it. So I would suggest that probably an abnormal EEG means there still is injury to the brain and that you want to make sure there's adequate blood flow into the far reaches of the brain. And one way to do that, in addition to dealing with the Bartonella infection, is to actually fix some of the injury caused by the Bartonella infection. That could be to that injury of the endothelial glycocalyx, okay? So in a situation, if I had a situation like this, there's a few things I would do. Number one of the things that can repair the endothelial glycocalyx is a type of green algae and an extract from that green algae called ramen sulfate. The product where you can find ramen sulfate is called arterosil, and that is, I'll show you here in a minute, but it's spelled ARTEROSIL. And it's got good data showing that it can improve and create a healthy endothelial glycocalyx. The way that I'm having patients recommend they do it is a couple pills twice a day for a month, and then decrease to one pill twice a day, and maybe do the whole thing for about 3 months and see if you get any benefit from that. Okay. And so that product again is called Arterosil. The manufacturer is called Calroy. I'll show you where you can find that here in a minute. Okay. Second thing I would do, if you've got abnormal EEG, it may mean that you've got actually some injury to the nerve cells themselves too. And if they're injured, that would mean their mitochondria complexes are injured too. And mitochondria are the energy factories that make every one of your cells run. If you have chronic infection, you can get injury to the mitochondria. It just so happens that when you have this mitochondrial injury, there usually is injury to the covering of the mitochondria. And the same fats that make up the covering of the mitochondria are the ones that make up the lining or the membrane of your nerve cells. So if you fix mitochondria, you're going to fix the nerve cell membranes as well too. And the product that I like to do that, those membranes are made up of what are called phospholipids. and a product that could do good repair of membranes, either the mitochondria or nerve cells, is a product called ATP 360 by Research Nutritionals. It's made up of those phospholipids. It also has some micronutrients that help your mitochondria to work well too. And so if I had a situation like this, I'd probably try the Arterisol. I would try an ATP 360, 3 pills 1 time a day. And finally, I would try to repair your nerve cells and mitochondria from the inside. And to do that, I like using liposomal glutathione. And the product I like to do that is a product by Research Nutritionals. It's got science showing that it actually leads to elevated levels of glutathione. And that is a product called Trifortify. And I would do 1 teaspoon once a day. But no, I have not seen abnormal EEG, but to me, that would mean there is some underlying injury. And I would be trying to repair nerve membranes, and I would be mitochondria, and I would be trying to make sure that there's no injury to the blood vessels that carry that the blood to where the area is injured. Okay. All right. So let me do a quick screen share here for you. All right, so this is my store. This is Marty Ross MD supplements. Anyone can purchase from me. There are some advantages if I mention a product tonight and you're wondering, or a generic product and you're wondering, well, what brand do I recommend for that? You could just put it up here in the search bar, so you can see what I have used successfully with my patients. Okay. What I try to do here is I try to select products that have the best chance of working for you, made from reputable companies, basically. To make it more affordable for you, I price all of my products as low as I'm allowed to by the manufacturers. And I still realize that means they're still expensive. But the other thing I do is I offer free shipping in the US for a value over $50. And I cover all of your state and local taxes as well, too. And that's the best I can do to make it more affordable for you. Okay. All right, so this Arterisol, so if you just put ART up here in my search bar, you're going to see here is the product that I was talking about. Okay, and so you can see it there. Okay, and this is the one that would repair the endothelial glycocalyx. All right, and then in terms of this ATP 360 that I mentioned, again, this is a product by Research Nutritionals. It's this one here on the end. And then again, I carry that Trifortify product, or the glutathione product as well too. All right. All right. Let me go back here. All right. Thanks for that question. Good luck. Hello, Davis. Yeah, Dr. Ross. Can you have numerous elevated mold mycotoxins and have no symptoms? If no symptoms, do you still treat with binders? Also, do you treat mold or yeast first? Okay, so it is possible. So whenever you get a positive test, we recognize that you can have false positive tests. All right. And there is something we call the predictive value of a test. The chances are that when you get it, what a predictive value is the chances are that when you get a positive test, it really is positive. Okay. And the predictive value of a positive test goes up, increases, if you have enough symptoms suggesting you really have the problem. All right. So in a situation like this, right, where somebody would have a positive test for anything, whether it's mold toxins or even Lyme, if you have a positive test but no symptoms, I usually don't treat, because there's a possibility, a high possibility, that it could be a false positive test. Okay. Now, I will tell you, if you pose this question, a number of my colleagues are going to probably say treat it. But I would say there's no science that says that treating to remove something that's not giving you a problem is worth it or prevents any problems down the road from developing. And again, what the issue I'm raising is it could just all be a false positive test. Okay. All right. Then in terms of how I approach somebody that has both mold toxicity and intestinal yeast overgrowth, Generally, I'm going to spend about a month trying to remove the intestinal yeast. And the reason that I want to do that is when you have intestinal yeast overgrowth, they trigger your immune system to make too many inflammatory chemicals called cytokines, okay? And cytokines, many of you who have watched my webinars again and again are probably going to go, oh, God, there he goes in cytokines again. But let me talk about cytokines real quick. So white blood cells make these chemicals called cytokines, and there's a variety of them. And those cytokines, white blood cells will make when they see a foreign invader, basically. That could be toxins. It could be too many yeast in your intestines. It could be Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia. It could be COVID. Any of those things can trigger your white blood cells to make cytokines. Okay, now cytokines can be good in the right amount. They cause your the purpose is to turn on your immune system to make white blood cells and to help those white blood cells work better and to draw those white blood cells to where the problem is. All right, that's all good. All right, but in certain issues, the immune system cannot deal with it adequately, and it keeps trying harder and harder, and eventually makes too many cytokines. And too many cytokines give you all of those symptoms we call Lyme disease symptoms. And all of those symptoms we call mold toxicity symptoms. And a lot of the symptoms we call yeast overgrowth symptoms, okay? The reason they all seem the same or look the same is they trigger too many cytokines. So what too many cytokines cause is fatigue, brain dysfunction, thinking problems, anxiety, depression. They can cause your immune system not to work well. Too many cytokines can disturb your sleep, can make you hurt all over. As you see all those symptoms I'm mentioning, those are what we call Lyme symptoms. Those are also what we call mold toxicity symptoms. And those are what we call yeast overgrowth symptoms, all right? So what I like to do is to try to do the quickest thing first to lower cytokines. And getting yeast out will do that quicker. Mold toxicity is going to take longer. The other problem, the reason I go for yeast first, is I want to try to get the cytokine load down, because as you start pulling out your mold toxins with binders, the action of removing these mold toxins triggers the immune system to make more cytokines. So what I like to do is try to start at a lower spot, if I can, on the cytokine scale, if you will, so that people are not as reactive as I start using binders to get the mold toxins out. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question, David. Good luck to you. Hello, Doug. This is Dr. Ross. One of my daughters has had, among other things, mold toxicity from 2 buildings she was in before 2019. She was previously treated with binders for a long period. Very recently, a doctor she is using for mast cell activation syndrome had her do an IgG blood test for mold spores, and it was positive for certain strains. He claims the test is an indication of current exposure. One of the strains shown in the test is black mold, which was present in one of the moldy buildings she previously lived in, as indicated professional testing. My daughter now lives with me, and we have had our place professionally tested 3 times, and each time it was near perfect. I know you favor the real-time urine test for mold toxins, as the toxins are what causes sickness. Is that still your view? And if so, why? What value, if any, is there in testing blood for mold spores? Could it be an indication of current exposure or colonization? Could the test be showing prior exposure given the black mold results? All right. I think, Doug, I will answer that, but I think it looks like your question got cut off. Let me see if there's a second part to it. Oh, yeah. Your second part is, if does that even matter? Thank you. Okay. So, oops, I just erased your question, but I remember it. I was going to repost it for you there, Doug. Anyhow, so there is a lab, and I forget, I think it's called mycotoxin or something. There's a company out there that has introduced a blood test to see if you are making antibodies against mold. All right. And specifically, they're looking to see if you're making antibodies against mold spores or mold from your environment. They are not measuring if you're making antibodies against mold toxins. All right. Now, antibodies are a system that your immune system uses to fight invaders. And essentially, they're proteins. And there are a type of immune cell called a B cell that makes these antibodies. And the job of an antibody, once they're made, is to land on your toxin, or to land on your Lyme, or to land on your COVID and stick on it. All right. And once these antibodies are stuck on these germs, they act like a big signaling device that tells your T white blood cells to come in and gobble up that infection, or your macrophages to come in and gobble up that infection. All right. So kind of think of the antibodies as a way of tagging your infection that then attracts the other parts of your immune system to kill or remove that thing. All right. Now, the thing about antibodies, there's a few families. In infections, we recognize primarily two. One is something called IgM antibodies, and another one is called IgG antibodies. All right. IgM antibodies are what you develop when you first have an invader in you, whether it's a mold toxin or an infection. And the idea is that IgMs usually will go away by about 6 weeks to 3 months, and then they get replaced by IgGs. Once you make IgGs, they are the memory of the immune system. And having an IgG positive does not say whether it's a current problem or whether it's an old problem. All right. And that answers part of your question. IgGs can remain positive even when the mold issue is gone. Okay. Now, that test, the IgGs that are being measured by this lab that's doing this IgG blood test, the IgG is not an IgG against mold toxins. It's an IgG against mold spores in your environment. All right. So it doesn't really say whether you even have toxins in you. It's more of an issue of that it's been exposed to mold. You or whoever has an IgG, somewhere in their life, they have been exposed to mold spores, the organism, not necessarily mold toxins that they absorbed and that they could not deal with. Okay. So I don't agree with your doctor. And I still rely on urine testing that is designed to measure whether you actually have the toxins in you that then get into your urine, and we can measure it that way. Okay. And IgG does not tell us whether you have the toxins in you. And especially an IgG versus IgM does not tell you whether it's a current problem. It just means you've had it. So it could be that she still is making these IgGs from previous exposures. All right. All right. Good luck. Hello, Jen. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for sharing your information and doing these webinars. I apologize if you have answered these questions before, but are you finding Babesia Odecoilei treatable by current protocols? I'm not finding anyone in my Babesia support groups that have hit remission with the Odecoilei strain. Are you finding it to be much more resistant than other strains in your practice? Also, I am wondering your thoughts on using ivermectin as an adjunct therapy for Babesia. It is seeming to help many others in their Babesia treatment. Do you think it kills Babesia, or is it acting more as an anti-inflammatory? Thank you for your insights. All right. So there is a physician that many of you may have heard of, a Dr. Lindner. And Dr. Lindner has come up with a theory that a lot of more difficult to treat Babesia is a strain called Babesia Odecoilei. All right. Now, Babesia, there's the common strains that we have always associated tick-borne infections as Babesia Microti and Babesia Ducani. It appears that in animal populations, there's this other strain called Babesia Odecoilei that is quite significant in animal populations. And if we look at data from animal populations, it may be the most significant strain, and is found heavily in the New England states, the upper Midwest, and even up into Canada as well, too. All right. The thing that makes Babesia Odecoilei more difficult to treat is it has the ability to form what are called fibrin nest, which is it takes your blood clotting proteins and wraps itself in it, and it becomes very difficult in part to get rid of it because it hides away inside of these fibrin nests that stick themselves on blood vessel walls. All right. Now, Dr. Lindner is extremely outspoken and a big proponent that he thinks that practically all Babesia is Babesia Odecoilei. There is laboratory evidence, however, there are certain labs that have the ability to test specifically for Odecoilei using genetic fingerprinting. And it looks like that is just not showing it to be true. It may be that there's a small portion that get Babesia Odecoilei, but probably still our predominant strains are Microti and Ducani. Okay, so I just want you to know that. Dr. Lindner, because he is so outspoken about this, is kind of grabbing everyone's attention, and it has everyone thinking, oh my God, Babesia Odecoilei, we all have it, and et cetera. But I don't think it's as big of a problem as Lindner is making it up to be. Okay, all right. Now, however, there are some things we've learned about how do you treat it if you do have Babesia Odecoilei. All right. So number one, you want to make sure that as part of your treatment, I would start first on your antimicrobials, and after you're stable, then I would make sure you're adding in something called an enzyme called lumbrokinase. Lumbrokinase is very useful at breaking up these fibrin nests that are part of Babesia. Okay. All right. And then it seems that there is a newer family. Well, there is a family of anti-malarials, and now we use these for Babesia, called the quinolines. And the quinoline that's been around the longest is something called primaquine. And more recently, there's a newer one called tafenoquin. Okay. Of those two, tafenoquin seems to be the strongest. Until recently, there's been a huge shortage of tafenoquin. And so therefore, most of us were using primaquine instead, and that developed a shortage too. All right. But probably the best drug to get at Babesia Odecoilei is tafenoquin. It comes as a 150 milligram pill. And the way I was using it in my practice, and the way many of my colleagues are using it, is to start at 2 pills weekly, once a week. Okay. You can also try to build it up more rapidly by doing 2 pills daily for 3 days and then switching over to weekly. But I usually just start at weekly so that it slowly builds up levels in your blood and you get a gradual killing instead of getting totally clobbered. Okay. All right. If I use a tafenoquin, what I'd like to do first is to start people on something called atovaquone along with azithromycin, and use those first. Azithromycin, 500 milligrams a day, along with atovaquone, which is also called Mepron, and I would start at a teaspoon twice a day. And I would do that for a month. And I would see if you get bad herxes, how you tolerate it, okay? And if after a month you seem to be tolerating that well, then I would add to that tafenoquin. And the tafenoquin, again, is a 150 milligram pill, and I would do 2 pills weekly. Okay. All right. All right. Now, in terms of the ivermectin, ivermectin is the rage drug. Everyone, because of COVID and prior to that, thinks that it can kill everything. It's like, here, you got a cold, take ivermectin. Here, you got staph infection, take ivermectin. I mean, I think it is one of the most overrated drugs. All right. I just want to say that. However, there is some laboratory evidence that shows that ivermectin does have some antiparasitic and antibabesial properties. When I have used it in my practice, I find it is a weaker antimalarial, antibabesial agent. That doesn't mean you won't get some help from it, but I find it to be weaker. But keep in mind, it's one of the current rage drugs. And so everyone and their brother thinks they're going to try it, and that's going to be the miracle agent for them. And it is not. Okay. If I had Babesia Odecoilei myself, or what I have done with my own patients with good success, is get them on the azithromycin and Mepron first, stabilize and then about a month later, go in with the tafenoquin. Okay. And after you're stable on that for a month, then add in your lumbrokinase as a 16 to 20 milligram pill twice a day. All right. Now, part of the reason that people get benefit from ivermectin, because people have used it to kill Lyme, and there is no evidence anywhere that ivermectin kills a bacteria infection. None at all. All right. But people try it for that too. All right. Because there's a craze. People are ivermectin crazy these days. That's how I look at it. Okay. Anyhow, the thing that ivermectin does, and people can feel better on ivermectin, is it is a great anti-inflammatory. That's the point you raised. Okay. But I don't think I would rely on it as the main agent in a Babesia treatment, whether it's Babesia Odecoilei, Ducani, or Microti. Okay. All right. Then there's some recent mouse studies that were done that got published maybe about, I think it was about 2 months, 3 months ago, about mouse experiments looking at Babesia Odecoilei. And in the mouse experiments, there's good evidence that azithromycin in combination with tafenoquin is a quite effective treatment against Babesia Odecoilei in mice. All right. In addition, when mice were treated with it, it actually somehow sparked an immune reaction that then gave them immunity to future infections with Babesia Odecoilei. Kind of interesting stuff, right? That's a mouse experiment, but it is some evidence that tafenoquin is a useful agent to treat Babesia Odecoilei. All right. And I will tell you, we don't have any evidence that ivermectin treats Odecoilei. There is some evidence, I believe, that it can have benefit against Microti, I believe, Babesia Microti. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question. It's a great question. Thanks, Jen. Good luck to you. Hello, Linda says she's new here and she has some questions. So Linda, if you have questions, I hope you'll write them down for us, okay, in that chat box. Hello, Kirsten. Let's see. Dear Dr. Ross, I'm glad to have come across your site. Oh, great. I'm glad you found it too. I'm a 58-year young woman. I appreciate that too. I'm a 62-year young guy, so I appreciate the young part there. Let's see. I have been suffering with peripheral neuropathy for 7.5 years. At first, it was subtle. Now the sensations are fasciculations, pins and needles, electric shock, and numb toes. It is there 24/7. Also, other sensations are the occasional dizzy spells. A little over a year ago, after seeing numerous neurologists, I paid for my own expensive Lyme test and found out it was positive. It was IgG and IgM positive for several species of Borrelia, as well as Bartonella and anaplasmosis. I was treated just recently. All positive serology is now only IgM. Burgdorferi is the same that showed up. While 2 new species were listed and others after over a year were not. Also, the Bartonella is not listed, which is a good thing, I guess. The HEA is also listed. Could the positive IgM serology indicate a reactivation of infection? I do not have tick bites in. Let me see if I can find the other part here. I'm not seeing the other part of your question here. All right, so let me just make some comments. So as I mentioned earlier, IgM antibodies are what you're supposed to develop at first in an acute infection, and they're supposed to go away. However, we are seeing in Lyme infection, and there's some evidence maybe in Bartonella that IgMs do not always go away, even if the infection is gone. So, or it could even indicate the infection is still present. Okay, so let me give you some more background on that. So about 20 years ago, the National Institutes of Health conducted 3 studies or funded 3 studies to look at whether longer term, I should say, IV antibiotics or antibiotic therapies would help people that had failed a previous Lyme treatment. Okay. And so these were all people that had been sick for a while and should have gotten rid of their IgMs and only be showing up with IgGs. All right. So to enroll in these 3 studies, people had to meet Centers for Disease Control criterion for having Lyme. And part of that meant they had to have a Western blot test that was positive, which is a method to measure antibodies, okay? And in the enrollment data, when they broke down the enrollment data, 50% of people that had, these people were already treated, they had been sick for a long time, 50% still were making IgM antibodies. And some never even made IgG antibodies. We are not clear why in Borrelia and Lyme, why some people keep making IgMs and others move on to doing the IgGs. We're just not sure what the reason is for that, okay? So I want to caution you, an IgM may be a sign of an old infection actually in Borrelia, or it could mean you still have an ongoing infection too. There's no way of knowing it, okay? So I want you to know that, okay? Secondly, with Bartonella, IGeneX has come up with a newer testing method called an immunoblot method. It's another way of measuring antibodies, and it's a lot better than a Western blot method at finding infections if they're there. In some of their validation studies that they did, looking to see if how good their test actually is in the real world, they were finding that some people that had chronic Bartonella were still showing IgMs. Not a majority, okay, but a small percentage. And so we now know that maybe Bartonella triggers a similar phenomenon where people don't move from IgMs to IgGs, okay? All right. Finally, once you've tested positive for infections, there is no testing we can do that accurately tells us whether that germ is in you still or out of you, okay? So even though some of my colleagues go back and retest and they think if the antibody reactions are gone, that must mean the infection is gone. What I would tell you is it could also mean that you've got germs that are just partying on, releasing chemicals that suppress the immune system so it can't make the antibodies, all right? So unfortunately, negative repeat testing is meaningless when it comes to knowing where you are in a treatment. And even positive testing, if it's an IgG that stays positive, or as I said with Bartonella and Lyme, even if it's an IgM that remains positive, that doesn't prove the germ is still in you either, because they just maybe keep being made even though they're not supposed to, all right? So the best of that thing that I like to do in my practice in terms of trying to figure out if somebody still has infection is go by the symptoms. We do not have a reliable way to test and see where you are. Unfortunately, we just don't. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question, Kirsten. Good luck to you. Hello, Jillian. Let's see. I have ectodermatitis chronica atropicans. Have you seen this resolve, or is it a permanent thinks? You may need to Google for an image, not a common diagnosis. Jillian, every now and then I get stumped. I actually don't know. I don't know whether this fully resolves with treatment or not. I just don't know it off the top of my head. I would have to kind of do some research on that, but I don't know it off the top of my head. All right. Thanks for the question, though. Good luck to you. Hello, Sandy. Let's see. Thanks for these webinars. What are your thoughts to raise serotonin naturally for someone with Lyme, Bart, and Babesia? Thank you. So you know what I like to use to raise serotonin is this tryptophan, or more specifically 5-hydroxytryptophan. So tryptophan in the salt form called 5-hydroxytryptophan is a building block for serotonin. All right. So many of you may know serotonin is a chemical made in the brain. And if you have low serotonin, sometimes that's part of depression. Actually, low serotonin may even be part of POTS. POTS is a situation where you have a lot of imbalance between your adrenaline and anti-adrenaline. You get periods of racing heart. You get lightheaded dizziness when you stand up easily. And so low serotonin may be part of that as well, too. And specifically, there's some data coming out in COVID, long COVID, that shows that people that have long COVID and have POTS as part of that, POTS, everyone stands for paroxysmal orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. All right. That's where your heart races real regularly. And if you try to stand up, you get lightheaded, dizzy easily. Those are some of the main symptoms of POTS. But there's evidence in long COVID that is due to a poor production of serotonin, actually. And so in some of the long COVID protocols, people are now starting to add in tryptophan or 5-hydroxytryptophan to build up serotonin, okay? And so the way I like to do it, serotonin comes as a 50 milligram pill. You can start, 5-hydroxytryptophan, comes as a 50 milligram pill, and you can start at 50 milligrams 3 times a day. And after a week or two, you can increase that up to 100 milligrams 3 times a day, okay? All right. Another thing, exercise can help raise serotonin as well, too. So that's something else. If you can tolerate exercise and it doesn't cause you to do worse, then exercise is another way to do that as well. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question. Good luck. Hello, Nick. Let's see. I'm dealing with Babesia, Lyme, and Bartonella. Babesia being the main one. I did some 2-pound shoulder exercises with no pain during exercise. The first days after was normal soreness. Then kept getting worse and spread to biceps, neck, forearms, and back. Have you ever heard of something like this? It eventually put me in a relapse. No, I haven't. I would want... that is something I would want to ask you a number of more questions, and I would want to examine you to figure out what is going on. I'm not clear that that's necessarily related to the Babesia, Lyme, and Bartonella. Maybe a totally different thing that happened that then stressed your body. But I would need more information by an exam to figure out how to advise you on that. Okay, unfortunately. Good luck to you, Nick. All right. Bear with me, everyone. I've got a couple people that are telling me they're having technical questions and problems, and yet I'm still seeing we're getting a lot of questions posted here. So, all right, let's see here. Steph says hi. Hello, Steph. Hello, Madison. Let's see. Borrelia burgdorferi does not produce toxins and does not harbor lipopolysaccharides, but it contains a variety of lipoproteins that may influence the development of arthritis. Read this in a study. Do you believe when you have the toxins that it is other infections? Does BART produce toxins? Is that why BART effects are more psychiatric because the toxins disrupt neurotransmitters? All right. So I know you have found a study that says that Borrelia doesn't produce toxins. I think there's some data that would suggest otherwise, okay? But I would have to go find those studies and see if that's so, okay? Regarding Bartonella, I'm not aware of anything that says it releases toxins. The reason that you get, one of the reasons, though, with both Bartonella and Borrelia that you can get neuropsychiatric symptoms is that they trigger a release of a lot of cytokines, and cytokines can give you a lot of the neuropsychiatric symptoms. Okay. In addition, both Borrelia and Bartonella can lead to injury of your nerve cells and the tissue in the brain as well too, and that can lead to some of the psychiatric symptoms too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Madison. Hello, Leslie. Let's see. Hi, my horse was diagnosed with Lyme last September. Do you have any insights into the treatment of horses? He was treated for 4 weeks with minocycline. We just got new titers back, and we'll start another course of minocycline next week. No, I don't have any insights. I'm a human doctor, not an animal doctor. All right. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of information for you. All right. Thanks for asking, though. Good luck to your horse. Hello, Stephanie. Let's see. Daughter, age 24, tested positive at age 5 with our whole family, but did not tolerate amoxicillin, threw up. Tested positive again, or still at age 19. Has had some knee pain in the recent years, also plantar fasciitis. She's at high risk for thyroid disease and also endometriosis. Her mom had good results with Alinea. Suggestions? Let me read this again. Daughter, age 24, tested positive at age 5 with our whole family, but did not tolerate amoxicillin, threw up. Tested positive again at 19. Has had some knee pain in recent years, also plantar fasciitis. All right, so, the problem, so a couple things. So in diagnosing Lyme, you have to look at a number of things. You have to look at what's the risk of getting it. So could there have been a transmission in utero? Could they all have been bitten and exposed to the same tick exposure risk? So you have to look at, is there a risk of getting it? Number 2, you have to look and see, are there enough symptoms suggesting active Lyme? And I can't tell from what you've said here. I can't tell. I would want to ask a lot more questions regarding whether there are enough symptoms to suggest that Lyme is here. On its own, plantar fasciitis and knee pain does not necessarily mean there's Lyme. There may be other situations going on. So I can't say based on the symptoms. Number 3, you look and see, is there any history of positive testing? All right. And as I suggested earlier, repeat testing is meaningless. All right. It doesn't prove anything. So I'm not sure what to make of that. I would want to ask you a lot more questions to see if there's enough symptoms here to suggest that maybe it's Lyme and whether doing an antibiotic trial would be meaningful or not. Alinea is not an antibiotic I would use. There is only one study, I believe, that has looked at using Alinea that may have shown benefit, but in the study, when Alinea was used, it was used with about 3 or 4 other antibiotics that may have been given the benefit. In my own practice, I have not found usefulness in using Alinea in the terms of treating Borrelia. I have found it useful in terms of treating intestinal parasites, but I have not found it useful in treating Borrelia. All right. So those are my comments for you. Sorry I couldn't give you more information than that, or a better response than that. Hello, Linda. See, I've heard that Ducani and quinine is promising treatment. Do you know anything about it? I don't know about Ducani and quinine specifically. Quinine has been something that has had some usefulness in treating Babesia, but has a lot of side effect profile with it. So, but I'm not sure what about Ducani and quinine specifically. All right. Thanks for your comment, 70, about sorry for my loss. I appreciate that. And thanks for your heart, Christine. I appreciate that too. Let's see here. The question from Eileen. Eileen says, glad your father is doing better. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Thank you. For those of you that are joining us late, as I said, my mother passed away after 10 days in the ICU, and my father decided to have a stroke around the same time, and so I've been dealing with those. That's why I had to cancel the last 2 weeks. Does either Lyme or Bart cause or worsen osteopenia, osteoporosis? I have not seen that happen. And, I've managed Lyme disease for over nearly 20 years, I guess now. Yeah. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that kind of relationship. I haven't seen any science suggesting that type of a relationship either. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Linda, let's see. Can Lyme disease make your white blood cells low? Yeah. It's quite common that people that have chronic Lyme or even Babesia or even Bartonella, while those infections are active, it can lead to some suppression of your body's ability to make white blood cells. Often, I have found that as you get those infections under control, people's white blood cell levels will return back up to normal ranges again. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question. Christine says she's sad for my loss. Thank you. I appreciate that. Eileen says, thanks so much for all you do. I appreciate that too. Thanks, Eileen. Hello, Erica. Let's see. What's your opinion, experience with Dr. Mozignani's T-Lab testing to show the amount of germ load and biofilms? Do you feel it can be used to accurately determine next steps of treatment based on how much germ load and biofilm the test shows is present? So Dr. Mozignani, everyone, is a doctor that predominantly specializes in managing Bartonella and has developed a microscopic exam that uses that is a PCR test that tags the germs and makes it so you can see them under the microscope. Okay. For Babesia at this time, he's looking to see under the microscope if he can see Babesia Odecoilei. At this point, he doesn't look for anything else but Babesia Odecoilei. In other words, he doesn't have the capability at this point to look for other strains of Babesia. For Bartonella, he's looking to see if you have Bartonella henselae, and he does not have the capability of looking to see if you have other strains of Bartonella. And Borrelia, I believe he can see under his microscope whether you have Borrelia burgdorferi, but he doesn't look to see if you have any of the other 7 potential strains that can lead. Okay, so there are limitations in terms of his testing being able to find all the varieties of these infections, all right? There's another limitation in that he has not done any studies that tell us how good his test is at finding these infections when they're present. All right. That's called sensitivity. What is the ability of a test to show you in all people, whether those infections, all people with an infection, what is the ability for that test to pick it up? So, for instance, is it a 70% sensitive test? In other words, does he only find it when it's present 70% of the time? We don't know. He hasn't done those kind of studies. And so beware, because he's measuring the genetic, he's putting a tag on the genetic material of the germ, that for him to be able to see these infections, they have to be swimming by the needle right at the time the blood is drawn. And Bartonella does not really live in the blood system. It lives inside your blood in the endothelial cells. It infects cells. Borrelia predominantly hides inside of cells. Babesia, maybe in the blood, he might be able to pick that up better, but we don't know how accurate his testing is at finding something, okay? But his test is really specific, meaning when it says it's positive, it's real, okay? And when it does say it's positive, it does kind of give you a quantification about how much. So if it does show up, the amount that's there does have meaning. And also the amount of biofilm that shows up there does have meaning. But we just don't know how accurate his test is at finding all cases. We just don't know. Okay? All right. And then there's limitations in terms of what he's testing for. One strain of Babesia, we think there could be 15 to 20. One strain of Bartonella, we think there's 15 that can infect you. And he can test for one strain of Borrelia. We think there may be 7 or 8 different strains. Okay? All right. Hold on here a minute, everyone. Hello, Derry. Let's see. Good evening, Dr. Marty. I have a difficult conundrum. I have experienced a variety of symptoms over the past 3 years. After much difficulty and attendance with many different doctors, I have now received a diagnosis of Lyme disease from an infectious disease consultant, while also a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis from a rheumatologist. The ID consultant is very confident that I do not have RA, but definitely Lyme, and the rheumatologist says the exact opposite. Have you any advice that you could offer? I'm finding it very difficult and hard to choose the best course of action, as both are advising very different treatments. Boy. So to give you the best advice, I would need to actually have a visit with you so I could look at what your symptoms are, what your risk factors of getting Lyme, what the various test results are, and I can kind of go through it with you and kind of give you an opinion. Okay, so I want you to know I am very limited in kind of accurate response I can give here, okay? But I will give you an observation. And that is, when people it is possible that when you have Borrelia infection, that it can trigger autoimmune diseases to occur. It can activate your immune system to start attacking you, all right? So it is possible that you have Borrelia that has triggered arthritic symptoms. It's possible, okay? It is also possible that you can have two things. It is possible, independent of having an infection that triggers rheumatoid arthritis symptoms and positive testing, that you actually have two things. You have Borrelia and you have rheumatoid. Could have two things, okay? All right. And it is also possible that all of your symptoms are due to rheumatoid, and even though you test positive for Lyme, it may all be rheumatoid. And the only way that I could give you accurate information and help you sort through it would be to do a detailed visit with you and really look at all your tests. And I don't have that as an advantage here. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Good luck to you. Hello, Lisa. See, my condolences and thank you for these webinars. You're welcome. And thank you. I appreciate that. I am almost finished with 6 months of prescription antibiotics for Borrelia, which I suspect I've had for several years. And I'm feeling very good for at least 2 months. I can currently take cat's claw, Japanese knotweed, liposomal glutathione, liposomal oregano, clove, and cinnamon, BPC 150. My doctor has offered methylene blue if I want to. Do I? What is a good herbal protocol to prevent relapse and to continue to feel well? Subtract or add to the above, and for how long? I hope to never see these symptoms again. Thanks, Lisa. All right. So my general rule of thumb about when to stop treatment, whether it's herbal antibiotics or prescription antibiotics, is that I want somebody to be completely symptom-free for at least 2 months. Not just feeling well, but literally completely symptom-free, okay? And in that case, I think it's okay to stop herbal antibiotics and to stop your prescription antibiotics, all right? The other situation that I will stop all treatment is if I have somebody that has been treated and they're doing well, and no matter what I do, I can't get them to feel any better over a 3-month period of time, and I have exhausted every other option I have to get them 100% well, then I sometimes will stop the antibiotics too. And the reason is, it is very possible that when you get the infection out of you, that the reason you still remain with symptoms could be due to injury created from having had the infections, okay? All right. So if you are feeling 100% well, I, in my practice, would stop everything, all right? If you are not yet 100% well, I think it would be okay to continue with your cat's claw, knotweed, cinnamon, clove, oregano, and the BPC 157 lower kinase. It seems to be working for you. And see if that will keep carrying you forward. That's a reasonable treatment to do. The methylene blue, so in your current treatment, the cat's claw and the Japanese knotweed and the cinnamon, clove, oregano all can treat growing and hibernating or persister Lyme. Okay, all of those can. So you're on some really good treatments to go after growing forms of the germ, as well as these hibernating or persister forms, all right? Methylene blue also has the ability to treat growing and persister forms of the germs. Do I think it's any better than these herbal options? Not necessarily. I've done all of this with my patients before. It is possible it could be better in you. The only way you'll know is to give it a try. But if you've gotten well and are still getting well on this combination, I'd keep it going. If you are 100% well, I'd consider stopping everything. All right. And see how you do. People can get 100% well from this illness. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Lisa. And absolutely talk this over with your doctor as well, too. I'm getting a snapshot of you here. I don't have all of the information, but those are my thoughts on it. Okay. Hello, Michelle. Let's see. My 16-year-old daughter is currently being treated for Lyme and Bart. Her copper test came back low. She takes 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C daily and 45 milligrams of iron. Could this be a contributor to low levels? Do you recommend a copper supplement or decreased vitamin C or iron? Thank you. Huh. I've never seen this happen before with somebody. I don't know the best answer off the top of my head. This is what, even when I treat patients in my office, there's sometimes they come in with information as I look at it and I think I got to get back to you. I have to look into this a little bit more. So this is a situation where I'd have to go ahead and do some literature search and try to give you an opinion based on that. And obviously this format, I can't do that. All right. So I'm sorry, I don't have the information for you on that one, but thanks for raising it. Karen says, could you please suggest a protocol to address the Lyme rash? I would need to know more what you mean by the Lyme rash. Do you mean the bullseye rash, or are you suggesting a different type of rash? If it's the bullseye rash, treating the infection with herbal or prescription antibiotics orally will take care of what's happening with your skin. If it's a different type of rash, usually I'm going to recommend using oral herbal or prescription antibiotics to get to get Lyme under control and get the rash under control. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question and good luck to you. Bear with me. Some people posted their questions twice and even 3 times here, and I'm just trying to get rid of them here. All right, let's see. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have babesiosis and have interest bone pain. What's causing these acute pains, and is it okay to walk on a sore foot even though it can feel broken at times? I had an old metatarsal injury which seems to flare regularly. All right. So Lisa, I would need to ask you a lot of questions. There's not enough here for me to answer, but I'm going to give you something to think about. I have found in my practice that foot pain and bone pain often is due to Bartonella. Now, I don't know if this is Bartonella in you, but I'm just saying you may want to go ahead and look and see, is it something else besides Babesia that you have? Okay. And to help diagnose Bartonella, take a look at the article I've written about how do you diagnose Bartonella. And let me go ahead and show that to you here. All right, so take a look at, this is my Lyme disease information site. I think most of you are familiar with it. And take a look in the online Lyme guide here and look at my article about how to diagnose, or my chapter about how to diagnose, and take a look at this article here called How to Diagnose Bartonella and Chronic Lyme Disease. I lay out testing options for you as well as how you can diagnose just based on symptoms, okay? And I guess my symptom list here doesn't include bone pain, but we usually think of bone pain as being something that's more related to Bartonella. But in addition to bone pain, you would want to have other symptoms of Bartonella as well, too. Okay? All right. All right. Good luck to you, Lisa. Hello, Benjamin. Can coffee enemas be a significant source of glutathione? Not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen that happen before. Or I'm not aware. There's no science that I'm aware of, I should say, that would show that. Okay. Hello, Lil. Hello, Dr. Ross. Red Labs test Belgium showed Borrelia relapsing fever group. Do they need to be treated differently than Borrelia burgdorferi? Thank you very much. Generally, I have found the same treatments that work on Borrelia burgdorferi to be effective against relapsing fever types of Borrelia. Okay. So generally, that's what I have found in my practice. Good luck to you. Hello, let's see, Sam. Hi. 2 years ago, I was on rifampin for 4 months for latent tuberculosis. I didn't realize I had Bartonella at the time. I recently been put on rifampin again for Bartonella alongside doxy and azithromycin. Will the rifampin work, or am I immune to it because I took it 4 months as an isolated treatment? Generally, I have found that even if people have previously used rifampin for other reasons, even up to 4 months like you have here, that when I go back and use it again as part of a Bartonella treatment, it can work quite well. So my experience says it should work for you. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Sam. Hello, Benjamin. Let's see, if a person doesn't have the resources to get tested properly, but am having Lyme symptoms, of course, could also likely be mold. What do you recommend to folks who don't have access to some of the testing? I initially did a tick panel at our city hospital. They said I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So that's all I have to go with. And it looks like I've had this a while. It just flared up the first time in my life in June. Benjamin, I don't have a good answer for you because the trouble is, to treat, you need to know what you're treating. And, I know you may not have the resources to do a whole bunch of testing, but it is useful to know if you have mold toxicity or not. It just is. And if there's a way you could come up with those resources to do one of the urine mycotoxin testing, I would suggest that. Okay. Good luck to you. Hello, Rebecca. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you for your willingness to do this work and for helping us so much. You're welcome. Let's see. My question is, what do you think I should do next? I am paralyzed by all the information I've amassed. I read your book on Buhner's and Horowitz's and a lot of others. I like yours and Buhner's best. I think I need to join your paid Lyme group. Here is a brief synopsis of where I am right now. I'm a 50-year-old female who grew up in East Texas and was bit by uncountable ticks as a child. I was very sick at age 8 or 9 and had some health problems after that going forward. I believe that is when I contracted Lyme. I remember some other folks in my town had it. I have been fighting myriad symptoms my entire life. About 6 years ago, a dermatologist said you have considered that you may have Lyme. My husband has suggested this previously after searching the internet for my symptoms. I had no idea what Lyme was, but I started researching and I started thinking I did have it. It's been rough. Let me see if I can find a second part to your question here. Oh, here we go. PCR March of 2023 DNA connections is what the oral surgeon's office used. I know it is not your lab of choice, but it is a PCR. Blood sample from a previously root canal tooth extraction. Positive for these. Borrelia burgdorferi, indeterminate Borrelia recurrentis. I'm going to keep going here. Current symptoms, most pressing, not exhaustive. Exhaustion, always trouble solving problems. Sequencing priorities, generally organizing my thoughts. Painful, stiff, and cracky spine. Cervical sacral. Severe daily nonstop headache. Took a year or so, though. Severe neck pain, bumps all over my face, not pimples, but are there to some always. This is new in the last. I have, let's see. So Rebecca, I apologize here, but this is a lot. I can't sort through this in this kind of a format. You've got a lot going on. You've got a lot of symptoms that would suggest tick-borne illness, and you also had a history of a lot of tick bites. And yes, East Texas gets Lyme. But keep in mind, it isn't just Lyme infection, Borrelia infection. People can also get Bartonella, babesiosis. To help sort through what I think this is, I would need to be able to have an interview with you or ask you just lots of questions, okay? And I can't do that in this format. You could, and the other thing is I do not agree with anything DNA Connection says. The problem with DNA Connections is they have done no validation studies to prove the accuracy of their results. So I don't know what it means. It doesn't mean anything to me when it comes back positive because they haven't done the testing to show that their method is accurate. All right. I apologize for that. So I just don't know what to do with those test results. Okay. The best way to see if you have Lyme is an expensive way, but is to do the immunoblot testing method through IGeneX. The immunoblot method can find Lyme if it's there, Borrelia, if it's there about 90 to 95% of the time. It is accurate 100% of the time. For Bartonella, they can find if Bartonella is there about 90 to 95% of the time, and it's also accurate 100% of the time, and same with Babesia. But it would require that you do a Bartonella, a Borrelia, and a Babesia test, okay? Now, if I could ask you lots of questions, I might say based on your symptoms, you might want to save some resources and just do the Borrelia test, okay? All right, so that's one thing to think about, okay? Secondly, it sounds like you're going to have to, it sounds like you're trying to treat this on your own. And the people, and I get from a financial standpoint, people have to do this, okay? There are some studies that were conducted by a group called LymeDisease.org has a program called My Lyme Data, where people with Lyme disease fill out a questionnaire, and then periodically My Lyme Data will go back and ask them more questions, all right? And what we know, they asked a few years ago, the people in their pool, they've got like 16,000 people in it now, what it took to get well. Okay, they asked, and what the things that they found, there's three significant findings of the study. Number one, prolonged antibiotics. All right, and they didn't really find out, they didn't ask people how they did on prolonged herbal antibiotics, but the idea is something that's killing germs, prolonged about a year or more. Okay. Right. Number two, working with a Lyme literate medical doctor. Those were two significant factors that help somebody get well because it's so complex to try to navigate. And I appreciate you've done a lot of reading here, but it's hard to put this all together by yourself if you've got a lot going on, okay? There are some Lyme doctors here in the state of Texas that are good. I don't know where in East Texas you are, but in the here in the Hill Country area, there is a physician in Marble Falls, and I'll try to find her name here. I'm blanking on her name right now. She's the actual president of ILADS. And bear with me, I'm just going to do a quick search here to see if I can figure it out. And the minute I see it, I'll know it. I'm just blanking right now. Amy Offit. That's Dr. Amy Offit, and her last name is spelled Offutt. She is the current president of ILADS. Okay. And yes, I know she, it's you're going to pay to see her, but you could at least get some initial answers as to what you have and then start doing treatment based on that. Okay. All right. So I don't have better answer for you than that. Good luck to you. Oh, one last thing. You could consider, you mentioned my Lyme disease support group, and that is an option. There's a number of people in there that don't have physicians, that at least one of the, in my Lyme disease support group is called Lyme United. And in that group, I have a number of forums. There is a forum where members can ask questions of each other. And we've got a very intelligent group of people. They are good at responding to those questions with meaningful information. There's another forum, which is a daily office hours with Dr. Marty Ross MD, where I respond to any written questions as best as I can that came in over the last 24 hours. I spend an hour writing responses each day. There's a third forum called Ask Marty Ross MD Live. And in Ask Marty Ross MD Live each week, I help dissect the problems that are going on with two people, where they will say, this is what's happening, what do you think? And because we use a Zoom room setup, I get to ask questions. And I can give some insights. It's limited by, I only get to spend a half hour with you asking questions, and I don't get to examine you, but I get a better sense of what direction to point you in, okay? So you may want to consider joining the our Lyme United group. And there's a lot of good people in there with a lot of good resources, okay? For those of you that are not familiar with Lyme United, let me just do a quick screen share here, because we are looking for members. We're currently up to, I think, 55 active members. Now, we launched about 6 months ago. It's slowly growing, but it is growing. And I'm always open for more members, because the more members we get, the more intelligence we have in the group, because the more of us there, we all contribute, okay? But anyhow, this is what my Lyme United group looks like. Again, we have a space where you can introduce yourself. There's a member-to-member forum where members can talk with each other. We have Share Your Wins on Wednesday, so everyone can share in the successes they have and learn from each other. There is my Ask Marty Ross MD Live right here, or my office hours. There's this forum, my Zoom room webinar, if you will. And then there is an event area where members host their own events as well, too. Okay. If you would like to consider joining this, you would want to take a look at my Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. Look at my Lyme United page, and it's here that you can then actually go ahead and hit this Join Now button. You can read more about what's going on in the group here, and even member testimonials that are going on here as well, too. Okay. All right. And again, I invite any one of you that is found usefulness at participating in these live webinars. My Lyme United group is like these webinars on steroids. I mean, there's a lot more you can get out of getting insights from me there, but also insights from a really involved group of people. It's a good group. All right. So feel free to join. All right. Anyhow, I hope that gives you some information there. Hello, Meg. Let's see. Could you address any relationship between Lyme and diabetes? I've had Lyme for over 5 years. I recently had a colonoscopy, and part of the prep was a few tests. One showed that I likely have diabetes. Surprise to me, since I eat a very healthy diet. I asked my gastroenterologist whether the long-term inflammation on Lyme could also contribute to diabetes. Basically, he denied that Lyme could last a long time and dismissed my concerns so that I can even have Lyme. There aren't doctors in my state that are Lyme literate. So anyway, could Lyme cytokine activity eventually affect the pancreas liver? All right. So Lyme and the increased cytokines can trigger hypercholesterol. So you can get a metabolic condition, you can have high cholesterol, okay? That's one metabolic condition that Lyme can cause. But I have never seen any data to suggest that Lyme triggers diabetes. I'm not saying it can't. There is no data that says that it does. Nor, treating thousands of people in my practice, I did not have anyone that had Lyme and also had diabetes. I just didn't see it happen. I would suspect that they're independent of each other. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Meg. Hello, Lisa. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have bone pain that comes and goes, often intense in feet, chest, and arms. Pain feels like the area is broken. Oh, I think we kind of covered this one. Yeah. So again, I think you asked this in a different way earlier. I would, Lisa, look at my Bartonella, how to diagnose Bartonella article. Okay. Hello, Steph. Let's see. My 17-year-old daughter has chronic Lyme and has been treating with antibiotics for a year, one antibiotic at a time. She reacts to some of the antibiotics and has had a hard time tolerating others. She is on herbals right now: Japanese knotweed, cryptolepis, artemisinin, SOD, sweet wormwood, cat's claw, and antigraphis. Can she recover from Lyme without using prescription antibiotics? I think is what you mean. She has a tremendous amount of inflammation in her knees and joints. We are treating for mold, but aren't seeing much progress. So I'm sorry to hear your daughter's having a hard time. To answer your question, yeah, you can recover from just using herbal antibiotics alone. So they're antibiotics, they're plant antibiotics, but they can work quite well, especially if she can only tolerate one prescription antibiotic at a time. A single prescription antibiotic is unlikely to get her well because Lyme lives in you in three different appearances. It lives as a spirochete that looks like a corkscrew. Some of the germ forms live inside of cells, and then some of the germ forms take on a microscopic cyst, okay? And you need to use antibiotics that can hit all three of these appearances, and no one single antibiotic will do that. In addition, Lyme lives in a hibernating as well as a growing state, and you need to address all those. And no one single antibiotic is going to do all that. Now, interestingly enough, the Japanese knotweed and cryptolepis are both useful at treating growing and persister forms of Lyme, growing and persister forms of Bartonella. And in addition, the cryptolepis and artemisinin are going to be, as well as the sweet wormwood, are going to be very good at treating Babesia. Okay. The cat's claw and antigraphis. Cat's claw is useful at growing and persister Bartonella. The antigraphis, I know Buhner recommends it, but there is no data showing it actually kills Lyme. He recommended antigraphis because it kills a similar spirochete called leptospirosis, but there's been more recent studies in the laboratory showing that antigraphis does nothing for Borrelia at all. Okay, so that would be one thing you might want to consider pulling out of her regimen here. But yeah, she could get well. And again, the MyLyme data information suggests that it could take a year or more. My own experience suggests that when people have chronic Lyme, it can sometimes take 2 years on average to get well. Okay. All right. Good luck. Good luck to your daughter. All right, hold on here, everyone. Bonnie says, respectfully, our Lyme community and Bartonella, SIBO, and chronic illness communities recently lost two high-profile amazing warriors, Lucy Barnes, a.k.a. Tin Cup, and Jake Picker, a.k.a. Bartonella Babe. We are beyond devastated. Yeah, I am aware of that. That is very sad. These illnesses, these infections can be devastating. I don't need to state that, but thank you for bringing that up for us. Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, I think that's it for me for tonight. I've had a good time being with you here. It's been good to be back. As many of you know, I've been dealing with some family health issues, a death in the family, unfortunately, and then my father has had some health issues I've had to be involved with. So I've been very distracted other places, and it's actually been enjoyable to be back here and doing this with you tonight. So I appreciate that. Keep your eyes out on your email tomorrow morning. I will be getting an edited version of the recording out to you of tonight's event, along with the synopsis. I'm going to be delivering it to you a little bit later than typical. It's probably going to come to you between 10 and 11 tomorrow, because I'm not going to be able to spend time on it later tonight, but I will get to it tomorrow morning. Okay. And when you get that email from me tomorrow, you'll be able to sign up for our next webinar, a series of webinars beginning next month, in a week, actually. And as I said earlier, I'll probably be doing that one on the road. I may even be in my camper van, so you can see what the inside of the camper van looks like as well, too, along with those two Basenjis, my dogs that travel with me, too. So anyhow, good night, everyone. Thanks for being here, and good luck with all the things you're doing to recover from Lyme and tick-borne illnesses and mold and all this myriad of junk that we get, unfortunately. Good night.